Hi, this is Kevin Deal, and today we're going to talk about adaptive auto bias. Now, I want you to pay attention. This may well be the most important video you watch. In a few minutes, you're going to have a better understanding of tubes and why adaptive auto bias stands alone as an engineering feat. Think of EL34s and other power tubes as automobile engines with carburetors. And if you have 4 of them, that's like having 4 carbs that need to be synchronized and idling the same. And that's exactly what a bias adjustment does. In fact, when you're setting tubes bias, it's called idle current. Some amplifiers have one bias setting screw controlling 4 tubes. Think of 1 screw, 4 carburetors. Now all 4 tubes have to be precisely matched. Now you can buy matched sets of 4, but tubes don't age evenly, and you can end up with 1 or more of them running hot. Distortion goes up, and you can have a premature tube failure, and if 1 tube fails, then that's it. You can't buy 1 tube to match the other 3. You have to replace all 4. A bigger problem is what happens when you step on the gas, which in audio means you're turning up the volume. If you have matched tube sets, that matching only applies to how they idle, not what happens when you turn up the volume. That's when distortion goes up. You may see manufacturers state that they have auto bias. 99% of the time, this is what they're talking about. A big hunkin' resistor that cost a couple of dollars. What this really is called cathode bias. They really aren't even supposed to call it auto bias. Technically, it's called self-bias, and it's an inexpensive trick often used in low-price guitar amps. I mean, it works, but at a huge cost. And why? 30% of the power goes up in heat. For that reason, most cathode bias amps run tubes really hard, often in Class A operation, which by definition is really hard and hot. This means the room gets hot, people have to retube more often, then they get discouraged, and the next thing you know, they go back to listen to solid state. I mean, it's no wonder that people think that tubes are a pain. Well, I mean, they don't have to be. The engineers at PrimaLuna sought out a solution, and here it is: adaptive auto bias. Adaptive auto bias looks at each tube in real time and keeps it in its perfect operating state. But it's not just at idle. When a tube is being pushed, it can cause a phenomenon in tubes called pinch off. Think of the fuel pump not supplying enough fuel to the carburetor. To our knowledge, only PrimaLuna addresses pinch off, which is why adaptive auto bias cuts distortion by over 50%, and it's most effective at high listening levels. I mean, this is even more critical when the tubes get old. Tubes don't age evenly, but adaptive auto bias is going to make sure you hear as little degradation from having old tubes as possible. This HP runs 8 power tubes, so it's equipped with 2 adaptive auto bias boards, 1 for each side. Adaptive auto bias is so ingenious, we're running 8 different tube types in this HP at once to demonstrate the power of PrimaLuna engineering. We're running a 6L6, KT66, KT88, KT120, KT77, KT150, 6550, and a KT190. I mean, think of this as like fuel injection, but it's for tubes. In recent years, PrimaLuna decided to take adaptive auto bias to places nobody could have imagined. First, PrimaLuna designed a way to actually change what type of amplifier that you're listening to with triode and ultralinear switching on the fly at the push of a button on the remote control. Go watch that video for a full explanation. Next is the tube switch on the side that fine-tunes for different dissipation tubes. But lastly, and most important, protection. When you have that inevitable tube short, most tube amps today will require a trip to the shop or the UPS counter, but not a PrimaLuna, Because the tubes are being monitored and managed anyway, why not protect the amp? PrimaLuna built in a new circuit that opens a relay to cut off plate voltage instantly at the first sign of trouble, to protect all the expensive parts inside the amp, and to make your life simple. An LED lights up telling you which tube is the problem. Simply replace it and go. It doesn't even have to be the same tube type. Remember, adaptive auto bias will make them all play nicely together in the sandbox. Sure, PrimaLuna wanted to create a tube amplifier as easy to own as solid state, but more importantly, they wanted a superior performance through real engineering. And that's what Music Illuminated is all about. Thanks.